All right, ready to dive into something you think you know? Soccer. But, oh, you're in for some surprises, trust me. We're going deep into its history today.
Deep, deep.
We've got a wild mix of sources here, official records, crazy anecdotes, even some pop culture curveballs thrown in.
Absolutely. We're going to uncover some truly bizarre stuff about how this whole beautiful game came to be. You think you know soccer? Think again.
First things first, where did it even come from? Like, where did this soccer thing even begin?
It really is a mystery.
It's like trying to pick the most likely suspect in a lineup of, well, incredibly enthusiastic ball kickers, right?
Yeah.
We've got China, Italy, England, all vying to that birthplace of soccer title.
Each origin story is fascinating, like a window into a different time and place, really. The Chinese trace it back to Cuju, played way back around 300 BC.
300 BC. Wow.
And get this, it wasn't your typical kickabout. Apparently, it started as a solo sport.
Oh, really?
More like a highly skilled hacky sack session. And then eventually it morphed into a team sport. And here's the kicker. FIFA actually recognizes Cuju as an ancestor of the modern game.
So, points for China, for the historical cred. But what about Italy? They're known for their, shall we say, passionate approach to soccer. What's their story?
Oh, the Italians point to Calcio, their ancient version, if you can call it that.
Yeah.
Let's just say it was a bit more intense than Cuju. Imagine a chaotic free-for-all where two teams basically go at it.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
With minimal rules and maximum aggression. Punching, tackling, anything goes. We're talking like medieval brawl meets rugby with a ball.
Wait, were they playing soccer or reenacting a gladiatorial combat scene?
Well, think of it more like the ball was just a tool to score. Much like in rugby, actually. It's almost like whoever had the ball became a target for some very enthusiastic attention.
So basically, early soccer, less about finesse, more about survival of the fittest.
You got it.
But we can't forget England, often hailed as the home of football.
Right.
Surely their origin story is a bit more, well, civilized.
Not quite. Buckle up for this one. The English version throws Vikings into the mix.
Vikings?
Severed heads, and, you guessed it, a whole lot of aggression.
Oh, okay, this is getting interesting.
Legend has it that after fending off Viking invaders, the English would, how to put this delicately,
Go on.
they'd play with the heads of defeated Viking chieftains, a form of celebration, supposedly.
Okay, that took a dark turn. But I guess every sport has its formative years, right?
Right.
So, kicking around a head eventually turned into kicking around a ball.
Precisely. And much like Calcio, early English football was a chaotic affair. We're talking hundreds of players, rival villages, in a massive scrum. No real rules, no boundaries.
Seriously, how did they even keep score in those early games? Was it just whoever had the most bruises at the end?
It's a mystery. But you can imagine this lack of structure led to some, well, issues.
I can imagine.
There's actually a record of a game in 1579 between Cambridge University students and some local villagers. It escalated into a full-blown riot. Things got so out of hand that Cambridge actually banned students from playing football outside the university.
So soccer was almost outlawed before it even started.
Almost.
Talk about rebellious youth, but obviously someone saw its potential, right? It didn't just disappear.
You're right. Some forward-thinking Cambridge professors, they saw something in it.
What do they see?
They recognized the game could teach teamwork, leadership skills even.
Huh, interesting.
So in the 19th century, they took on the pretty big task of actually writing down some rules for football. This ultimately led to the split between soccer, where you only use your feet, and rugby, where you can use your hands.
Oh, the great soccer-rugby divide. It's fascinating to think those rule makers in Cambridge basically shapes the future of the sport.
They did. They really did. And their efforts paved the way for the creation of the first official leagues and associations in England. The Football Association, or FA, was born in 1863. It united 11 clubs under a standardized set of rules.
So things were starting to get organized.
Exactly. And just a year later, the first ever FA Cup was held. That's the oldest national football competition in the world.
From chaotic brawls to organized competitions, soccer was starting to look like the sport we know today. It was becoming a cultural phenomenon, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. And its influence was about to spread far beyond England.
Oh, how so?
Well, as the British Empire expanded, they took their love of the game with them, setting up clubs and leagues across the globe. You could say British colonialism inadvertently kicked off soccer's journey to becoming the world's most popular sport.
Talk about an unexpected legacy. But here's where things get really interesting. The first official international soccer match. It wasn't between England and another European nation, as you might think.
Nope.
It was between Uruguay and Argentina.
You got it. That match took place in 1901, a full 30 years after the first official match between England and Scotland. And just 2 years later, Austria and Hungary faced off. These early matches signal a crucial shift. Soccer was breaking free from its British roots, taking hold around the world.
So the stage was set for a truly global game. But there's one big piece missing from the puzzle: the World Cup.
Ah, yes, the World Cup. But before we get to that, we need to talk about the Olympics.
The Olympics.
Believe it or not, before the World Cup existed, the Olympics was the premier international soccer competition.
Wait, seriously? I always thought of the Olympics as more about track and field or swimming.
Well, in the early 20th century, soccer was a relatively new addition to the Olympics. It wasn't taken quite as seriously.
It was like a sideshow.
Kinda.
Yeah.
And most teams were made up of amateur players.
But the pros we see today.
Exactly. But that didn't mean the games weren't fiercely competitive. The 1908 London Olympics, England took home the gold, with Denmark as the runner-up.
So England was dominating the early Olympic scene. But something tells me their reign wasn't going to last forever.
You're right about that. Remember those early international matches between Uruguay and Argentina?
Yeah.
Well, South American soccer was quietly becoming a force to be reckoned with. And in 1924, Uruguay made its Olympic debut in Paris. They absolutely blew everyone away.
Really?
Winning every single match, outscoring their opponents 20-2, ultimately claiming the gold medal.
Wow. Talk about a statement win. While Europe was focused on the Olympics, South America was building a soccer dynasty.
Precisely. Uruguay's victory exposed a gap in international soccer. The Olympics, with its amateur focus and, let's be honest, Eurocentric bias, wasn't capturing the true global scope of the sport.
It was missing something.
It was, and that's where FIFA stepped in. In 1928, they decided to create a new tournament, one that would bring together the best professional teams from around the world.
The FIFA World Cup.
Exactly.
And it all started in Uruguay, the nation that so spectacularly showcased South American soccer prowess.
Precisely. The 1930 World Cup in Uruguay, a landmark event.
It marked a new era for the sport.
It did, but it wasn't without its challenges. Traveling back then wasn't easy, especially for those European teams.
I can imagine.
Crossing the Atlantic by ship was a long and expensive journey. So many European nations just said, thanks, but no thanks. Only 4 European teams ended up participating, compared to 9 from the Americas.
So the first World Cup was more of a regional affair than a truly global one. But even with limited European participation, Uruguay emerged victorious.
Yep. Defeating Argentina in the final. Talk about making a point.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They solidified their status as a soccer powerhouse, but that limited participation, it highlighted a growing need for a more accessible, more inclusive World Cup format. Right?
You got it.
It was clear that future tournaments would need to bring together nations from all corners of the globe.
From all corners.
This is already way more dramatic than I expected.
Yeah.
From ancient head-kicking rituals to international showdowns, soccer's history is full of surprises.
Full of surprises. So soccer's path to global domination wasn't exactly, a straight shot.
Well, every good story needs a little conflict.
Right.
What happened next?
Well, the 1934 World Cup, it was held in Italy, marked the tournament's first time in Europe.
Big moment.
And radio broadcasts, they brought the games to a much wider audience. Italy won that one, beat Czechoslovakia in the final.
And Uruguay?
There was one team noticeably missing, Uruguay.
Why? Were they intimidated by the European competition?
Not quite. They were actually boycotting the tournament in protest.
Protests. Over what?
Remember how many European teams skipped the 1930 World Cup in Uruguay?
Yeah, the travel difficulties.
Right. Well, Uruguay felt like holding the 1934 World Cup in Europe was a bit of payback. And they weren't happy about it.
So it was a tit-for-tat situation.
Yeah.
I can see how that would create some tension between the European and South American soccer communities.
Exactly. And that tension, it kind of continued to simmer. The 1938 World Cup, it was held in France, and once again, Uruguay, along with Argentina, boycotted the event. Brazil and Cuba, they represented the Americas, but neither made it to the final. Italy ended up defending their title, defeating Hungary to become back-to-back champions.
So the pre-war era, it was all about South American dominance, with a bit of a World Cup tug-of-war between Europe and the Americas.
Yeah, you could say that.
But then, of course, World War II put everything on hold.
The world had bigger things to worry about than soccer, you know?
Okay.
It wasn't until 1950, a full 12 years later, that the next World Cup took place.
12 years is a long wait for a World Cup.
Yeah.
So much must have changed in the world of soccer during that time. Where was the 1950 tournament held?
Brazil was chosen as the host,
Makes sense.
given their, growing passion for the sport. But this World Cup, it was unlike any other. The world was still recovering from the war, and the Cold War was starting to cast its shadow. Only 13 nations participated.
Oh, wow.
And get this, the final stage wasn't a knockout tournament.
Right.
Instead, the top 4 teams played each other in a round-robin format, with the team with the most points becoming champion.
A round-robin format in the final. That's pretty unusual. It must have been incredibly tense with each match carrying so much weight.
It was. And the final match between Brazil and Uruguay, it went down in history as one of the most dramatic moments in World Cup history.
Okay, set the same for me.
Okay, so picture this, a packed Maracana Stadium in Rio de Janeiro. Over 200,000 fans.
Wow.
Brazil only needed a draw to win the cup. They were leading 1-0 going into the final 10 minutes.
So close.
Victory seemed certain, but then...
Oh, no, don't tell me. Uruguay scored twice in the last 10 minutes to snatch victory.
Exactly. It was an incredible comeback. The stunned Brazilian crowd, they fell silent, and Uruguay claimed their second World Cup title.
I bet that was heartbreaking for Brazil.
It was. This match, it became known as the Maracanazo. It became a national trauma for Brazil and a legendary tale of Uruguayan resilience.
Wow, what a story. But Uruguay's reign as champions wouldn't last forever, right?
You're right about that. The 1954 World Cup in Switzerland, it marked the arrival of television broadcasts, bringing the excitement of the tournament to millions around the world. This time, it was West Germany that emerged victorious.
Germany.
Yep, defeating the heavily favored Hungarian team. In a thrilling final, it became known as the Miracle of Bern.
Television was a game changer. It brought soccer right into people's living rooms.
Absolutely. And the money from television rights and advertising, it started pouring into soccer, transforming it into a multi-billion-dollar industry. This influx of cash, it fueled the growth of professional leagues and clubs. Player transfers became a huge deal, with players being bought and sold for increasingly ridiculous amounts of money.
It's amazing how quickly soccer went from a grassroots sport to a global spectacle. But we can't forget about the players who made it all happen. The 1958 World Cup in Sweden, it introduced the world to a young Brazilian striker named
Pelé. Pelé. The name is synonymous with soccer greatness. At just 17 years old, he led Brazil to their first World Cup title. His skills, his speed, his goal-scoring ability, it captivated audiences everywhere, instantly making him an icon. He went on to win 2 more World Cups, a feat no other player has achieved.
Pelé's story is truly remarkable. From the streets of Brazil to the pinnacle of soccer glory, he embodied the dreams of so many young players.
But the World Cup, it wasn't just about individual brilliance. It also became a stage for, intense national rivalries.
Right.
And even political tensions, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The 1962 World Cup in Chile, it saw Brazil defend their title, solidifying their dominance.
Yeah.
But the 1966 World Cup in England, it had a surprising twist. North Korea.
North Korea.
Yeah, a nation shrouded in secrecy. They made their World Cup debut, and they shocked everyone, advancing to the quarterfinals.
North Korea in the quarterfinals. That's wild. It just goes to show that anything can happen at the World Cup. Anything can happen. And sometimes the drama, it spilled off the pitch. In 1969, right before the 1970 World Cup in Mexico, a qualifying match between El Salvador and Honduras, it actually escalated into a war.
Wait, a war? Over a soccer match?
Well, it wasn't just about soccer. The two nations, they had a long history of, political and economic tensions, and the match became a flashpoint.
Wow.
This football war, as it came to be known, it only lasted 100 hours, but it resulted in thousands of casualties. It's a stark reminder of the powerful emotions that soccer can evoke.
That's a sobering thought. Soccer, it can be a unifying force, but it can also, expose existing divisions.
Indeed. Despite the conflict, the 1970 World Cup, it went on, and Brazil, led by Pelé, once again claimed victory, defeating Italy in the final. This was their 3rd World Cup title, which meant they got to keep the Jules Rimet trophy.
The original World Cup trophy.
They won it.
They got to keep it permanently.
Permanently.
3-time champions. Brazil was a force to be reckoned with.
A force to be reckoned with.
But the story of the Jules Rimet trophy, it doesn't end there, does it?
Unfortunately not. In 1983, it was stolen from its display case in Brazil. and it's never been recovered.
Really?
It's a sad chapter in World Cup history.
It's hard to believe that such a prized possession could just vanish, like something out of a heist movie.
It really is.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Let's talk about, the evolution of the game itself. The 1974 World Cup in West Germany, it saw the introduction of two now iconic features, red and yellow cards.
Ah, yes, the ultimate symbols of soccer discipline.
Why were they introduced?
Well, it was partly driven by the rise of color television.
Oh, interesting.
Before color TV, it was difficult for viewers to clearly see the referee's hand signals.
I can see that.
Red and yellow cards, they provided a visual language that everyone could understand. Plus, it added to the drama of the game for, television audiences.
So even the way soccer was officiated was influenced by technology. It's fascinating how the sport adapted to the changing world. Speaking of technological influence, you mentioned earlier the impact of television in the 1980s. I'm curious to hear more about that.
Yes, television, it played a huge role in soccer's global explosion during the 1980s. It brought the game to homes worldwide, creating new fans, boosting the growth of professional leagues. But there's another factor that might have contributed to soccer's surge in popularity during that era.
It's that.
And it's a bit unexpected, a Japanese manga series called Captain Tsubasa.
Wait, you're saying a cartoon about soccer could have actually influenced the sport's growth?
It's a fascinating theory. Captain Tsubasa, it debuted in 1981. It told the story of a young boy with a burning passion for soccer who dreams of leading Japan to World Cup glory.
Sounds inspiring.
It was a massive hit in Japan and quickly spread to other countries, capturing the imaginations of, young audiences. With its, over-the-top action, dramatic storylines, and inspiring message of dedication and teamwork. Think of it like a soccer version of Rocky, but in animated form.
Okay, I'm intrigued, but how could a cartoon have such a real-world impact?
Well, think about this. Many professional soccer players who rose to prominence in the 1990s and 2000s, they grew up watching Captain Tsubasa.
Interesting.
Stars like Zinedine Zidane, Alessandro Del Piero, Fernando Torres, they've all said the series was an inspiration to them.
So you're saying that a generation of soccer players were subconsciously influenced by the techniques and strategies they saw in Captain Tsubasa?
It's possible. It shows how, popular culture can shape our aspirations and maybe even our skills. But while Captain Tsubasa was inspiring young players, professional soccer was undergoing a major transformation. The 1982 World Cup in Spain, it was a turning point. A record 1 billion people tuned in. And the money flowing into the sport, it reached unprecedented levels.
Wow. That sounds like a pivotal moment for soccer's global reach and for the economics of the game.
It was. And speaking of economics, the 1986 World Cup, it was originally planned for Colombia, but it had to be moved to Mexico.
Why? What happened?
Because of Colombia's economic crisis?
Oh, wow.
This last-minute change, it highlighted the increasing financial stakes of hosting the World Cup.
It's a reminder that even the world's most popular sport isn't immune to real-world problems. But even with the economic challenges, the 1986 World Cup, it still delivered some of the most iconic moments in soccer history, right?
Absolutely. This tournament marked the arrival of Diego Maradona.
Ah, Maradona.
The Argentinian superstar.
He was a true legend.
He took the world by storm with his, incredible dribbling skills, audacious goals, and, let's be honest, controversial antics.
Ah, Maradona. The hand of God, the goal of the century. He was a true legend, both loved and criticized.
He was a complex figure, for sure. But his brilliance on the field, it was undeniable. He practically single-handedly led Argentina to victory, cementing his status as a global icon.
It seems like every World Cup era had its defining player. Pelé in the 60s and 70s, Maradona in the 80s. Who came next?
The 90s, it saw the rise of stars like Roberto Baggio, Romario, Hristo Stoichkov, each bringing their own unique style and personality to the game. The 1990 World Cup in Italy, it was a fairly low-scoring affair, with West Germany getting revenge on Argentina for their 1986 defeat. But off the field, a significant development was taking place.
Oh,
The first Women's World Cup.
that's right. The Women's World Cup finally got its due recognition. Where was the first tournament held?
China hosted the inaugural Women's World Cup in 1991. It was a landmark moment for women's soccer. The United States took home the trophy, defeating Norway in the final. This tournament marked the beginning of a new era, paving the way for the growth and recognition of women's soccer globally.
It's amazing to see how far women's soccer has come since then. It's now a major force in the sporting world. with his own superstars and devoted fan base.
Absolutely. But while the Women's World Cup was gaining momentum, the men's game continued to evolve. The 1994 World Cup in the United States, it expanded to 24 teams, and Brazil, led by Romario, won their fourth title in a penalty shootout against Italy. However, this World Cup, it was also marked by tragedy.
Oh, what happened?
Colombian defender Andres Escobar, who had accidentally scored an own goal in a match against the United States, he was tragically murdered when he returned home.
Oh, wow.
It's believed he was targeted by gamblers who had lost money on the match.
That's a horrifying story. It's a reminder of the dark side of soccer fandom and the dangers that can sometimes creep into the sport.
It's a tragic reminder of the real-world consequences that can stem from the, passions surrounding soccer.
On a lighter note, the 1998 World Cup in France, it was a huge success for the host nation. They defeated Brazil in the final to claim their first ever World Cup title.
It was a truly magical moment for France. Zinedine Zidane, the French midfielder with Algerian roots, he became a national hero, scoring 2 goals in the final. His performance solidified his place as one of the greatest players of his generation.
Zidane's story, it's really inspiring. It shows how soccer can transcend cultural and ethnic boundaries.
You're right, and the late 1990s also saw the rise of another global superstar, David Beckham. He was the ultimate soccer celebrity.
He was more than just a talented player. He was a global icon, a marketing phenomenon, and a symbol of soccer's growing commercial power.
It's amazing how soccer stars became cultural icons, transcend the sport itself. But let's not forget about the game itself. What were some of the other major developments in the late 20th and early 21st centuries?
Well, the 2002 World Cup, jointly hosted by South Korea and Japan, it was a historic event.
First time in Asia.
First time the tournament was held in Asia. It was also a showcase for Brazilian dominance as they defeated Germany in the final to claim their 5th World Cup title. 5-time champions. Brazil solidified their legacy as the most successful team in World Cup history.
He did.
What a run.
And the 21st century has also seen, new soccer powerhouses emerge, like Spain, who won their first World Cup in 2010, and Germany, who dominated the 2014 tournament.
That 7-1 victory over Brazil in the semifinals.
Incredible.
A shocker.
It was a national humiliation for Brazil, a crushing blow for the host nation, but it also highlighted the unpredictable nature of soccer and how the balance of power can shift.
No team stays on top forever. Speaking of staying on top, the Women's World Cup has seen the United States become a dominant force, winning 4 titles in 8 tournaments.
They have.
Their success has been instrumental in raising the profile of women's soccer around the world.
Absolutely. And as we look to the future of soccer, one thing is clear. Its global reach, its cultural influence, they continue to grow. The 2022 World Cup in Qatar, despite some controversies, it broke viewership records, showing just how much people love the sport. And with the 2026 World Cup set to be jointly hosted by the United States, Canada, and Mexico, featuring an expanded format with 48 teams, the future of soccer looks exciting and unpredictable.
I can't wait to see what the future holds. Before we wrap up, let's take a look at some of the most impressive World Cup records.
All right.
It's time for some mind-blowing stats.
All right, let's start with goals. Who's scored the most in World Cup history?
Got to be a pretty impressive number.
It is. It is. When it comes to finding the back of the net, Brazil reigns supreme.
They always seem to have a knack for scoring, that's for sure.
They've racked up an incredible 229 goals in World Cup history.
229.
Germany's close behind, though, at 224. That's some serious firepower.
Wow. Brazil really knows how to light up the scoreboard. But goals are only part of the story. Which nation has the most World Cup victories overall?
Brazil again.
No surprise there.
Out of 109 World Cup matches, they've won, get this, an impressive 73.
73.
That's a win rate of nearly 67%.
Definitely earned their title as a soccer powerhouse. Okay, let's talk about longevity for a moment. Who holds the record for the oldest player to ever compete in a World Cup match?
That honor goes to Egyptian goalkeeper Essam El Hadary. He was 45 years and 161 days old when he played in his final World Cup match in 2018.
That's amazing. It's inspiring to see players competing at such a high level at that age.
Yeah.
What about the player who's played in the most World Cups?
That would be Lothar Matthäus of Germany.
Matthäus, okay.
He competed in 5 World Cups, which is a testament to his incredible skill and endurance.
5 World Cups. That's a whole career's worth of memories right there.
Yeah.
Okay, but let's talk about the players who, shine brightest on the biggest stage. Who scored the most goals in World Cup finals?
That record belongs to Miroslav Klose of Germany. He's found the back of the net a remarkable 16 times in World Cup final matches.
16 goals in finals. Talk about performing under pressure. But the World Cup isn't just about, individual stars. It's about national pride.
Hmm.
And those underdog stories that capture the imagination. Which nation holds the record for the smallest population to ever qualify for the World Cup?
That would be Iceland, with a population of just 330,000.
330,000.
It defied the odds to qualify for the 2018 World Cup.
Iceland's story, it's a true underdog tale. It gives hope to soccer fans in every corner of the globe.
Yeah.
Okay, now let's talk about the flip side of goal scoring. Own goals. Which World Cup had the most own goals?
The 2018 World Cup takes the prize for that one, with the record-breaking 8 own goals.
Ouch. I bet those moments make for some interesting post-match analysis. Speaking of things that can be a bit awkward, let's talk about money. Soccer has become a multi-billion-dollar industry, and player salaries have reached, well, astronomical levels. Who are the highest paid players in the world right now?
Currently, the highest annual salary, it goes to Kylian Mbappe of France, who earns a cool $62 million per year.
$62 million.
Lionel Messi is in second place at $41 million, followed by Neymar at $36.5 million, Cristiano Ronaldo at $36 million, and Oscar, who plays in Shanghai, at $34 million.
Those are some mind-boggling figures. It's a long way from the early days of the sport.
It really is. Soccer's journey has been one of, remarkable transformation. From ancient origins to the global spectacle we see today, it's a sport that has captivated billions, ignited passions, and transcended borders. And as we've seen, its history is as rich and diverse as the nations and players who have graced the field.
It's been an incredible journey through time, uncovering the stories and the twists that have shaped soccer into the game we know and love today. From those early, shall we say, enthusiastic matches to the rise of, global tournaments, the impact of technology, and the ever-evolving nature of the game itself, soccer has come a long way. And as we look to the future, it's clear that soccer's influence is only going to grow.
Absolutely. Who knows what the future holds? Maybe we'll see the rise of robot soccer leagues or interplanetary tournaments.
Robot soccer leagues.
Huh.
Now, there's a deep dive I'd be up for exploring. But for now, we've reached the end of our exploration into soccer's fascinating past. We hope you've enjoyed it, and we encourage you to, keep exploring the world of this truly global sport.
Until next time.